Today's show is sponsored by the multiorgasmicmama.com. If lack of confidence, low libido, or guilt and shame around your sexuality are the cause of your bedroom woes, the hot wild sex you never have anymore, or the transition into motherhood that sucked your libido dry, let me help you get your mojo and magnetic feminine spark back. Magic, miracles, total self-love, and multi-orgasmic bliss included. See you at themultiorgasmicmama.com. Hello there, gorgeous. How you doing today? I'm just getting into work this morning, and I am ready to share with you all about how I honestly don't understand how couples can make it 10, 20, 30 years together and not learn Tantra. Because Tantra is seriously the magic sauce for keeping the spark alive in a long-term relationship. And since it's Valentine's Day here in the States on Thursday, I wanted to share with you the 9 reasons why every long-term committed couple should learn Tantra. The first reason that you should learn it is because you get to learn your true yes and no and what consent really means. What is a true yes and no, you ask? I'm so glad you did. Well, women in particular have been penetrated too often, too soon, long before they were ready. And this is because they were never taught how to connect with their bodies, and they were never taught how to create an internal dialogue with their body that could lead to listening to the body's wisdom. And this happens because our culture does not value the wisdom of the body. Instead, it wants to completely ignore it. It wants you to push through everything, to force your body to do things, to take a pill instead of actually listening to the symptoms, the underlying things going on in your body. It wants you to put unhealthy expectations on your body. We often drink coffee to wake up, alcohol to go to sleep, or we take Motrin or Advil or whatever to numb the pain, when really, when there's something going on with the body that it's trying to tell us, we often just numb out the signals. And in sexuality, the same thinking spills over big time. We expect our bodies to always be turned on. We expect our bodies to perform. And if they're not, then something's wrong with us. But it's okay to not have sex and to perform all the time. And it's okay to actually just spend a night cuddling and touching if that's what your body needs. But sometimes the opposite is true too. Sometimes we get used to this, and yet deep down we're craving for more. We're craving to be ravished, or we have some underlying fear that keeps us from going all the way. So our yes and no can often be really confusing. A lot of us mistake our yes for our no and our no for our yes. So how do we learn to really decipher between the two? When we learn Tantra, we learn to tune into the body's needs and desires. And it's like you learn to speak with it in a really loving and compassionate way, so you can find out what the body actually needs instead of ignoring all of the things, or forcing it to be somewhere, or forcing it to be on some level that it just isn't. And we can also say that in Tantra, we learn what consent really means, because we learn to ask from more than our mind space. When you're creating this internal dialogue with the body, you are acknowledging the authority of the body as a living and breathing thing as well. Your body has a mind of its own, and your brain has a mind, obviously. So what you're learning here is that both of them can exist simultaneously, and both of them can have a say. But it's really important to give the body a dialogue, to give it a voice. And in Tantra, you learn to really do that. Now, the second reason that every single long-term couple should learn Tantra is because you learn how to hold space for each other, so there's less arguing and fighting. And I'm really kind of tired of the word holding space, because it's like a trendy word right now, and I hate doing trendy words because I like to set the trends. But I'm going to use it because it's probably something that most of you can relate to. All right, so when couples get into patterns of arguing and fighting, it's often because they are not very good or even educated in space holding, or what that even means. So what is it? Well, space holding is where we are actively not interrupting. We're not trying to fix the other person with a solution or a suggestion. We're not interjecting our partner to tell them how they're wrong. We're not trying to tell our partner how to make things better for themselves. And we're not thinking about what we're going to say when our partner is then talking. Who's guilty of that? Okay, I'm over here raising my hand. Now, I want you to think about how it would help your relationship if you focused on space holding, which does mean consciously showing up and feeling yourself as creating a unique kind of space for your partner to share openly and freely. If you could create that sort of space for your partner, how would that change your relationship? If they felt safe to actually share their deepest truths. So in Tantra, we create conscious containers for couples to hold space for each other so that their communication is improved and becomes really next level, which leads me to the third reason why every long-term couple should learn Tantra. You learn to communicate on another level, and you learn to create a safe container to share your deepest truths without fear of judgment. The great thing about learning to hold space for each other is that you are literally giving your partner a huge gift. You're giving them the gift of a safe space. Isn't that what partners are for? Just having a soft place to land and having a safe space to share our deepest truths without worrying that they'll judge us or attack us or tell us what we should be doing instead of what we really feel we want to do. Sometimes just people need space to talk. They need to talk things out, to process things. But if you're constantly, if your partner is constantly berating you or going off on a tangent, then it feels not safe to share those things. So that's when the communication starts to break down. When couples don't have good space holding, then they lose trust in each other to share their deepest truths because they end up attacking each other or they end up getting into a fight and blah, 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 blah. And that there is the reason that communication often degrades over the course of years being together, because we learn over and over that it's really not safe to share our deepest truths with our partner. But in Tantra, you get the opportunity to learn how to create safe communication containers so you don't degrade the trust over the years. And if you already don't trust sharing your deepest truths with your partner, because if you've been together for 10, 20, 30 years, that absolutely might be the case, then just know that it's not too late to change that. You can rekindle trust and rekindle this ability to communicate with the practices that I teach my Tantra clients. Okay, now the fourth reason that every long-term couple needs to learn Tantra is because you learn connection practices that have you both turned on before you ever even touch each other. I don't know about you, but I like to take my time to feel the energy build up before I'm ever even touched. Oh my God, like the tension, the polarity. Sometimes it takes time to build up this energy, especially if you haven't seen each other for a while, or if you're not really actively turning on each other throughout the day because you're not really around each other throughout the day, if you're not sending those sexy text messages. All right, well, if you're not doing all those things, then you might need more time to really get turned on and feel ready for sex. And, focusing on that and turning each other on without the actual act of sex can be so amazing, especially for women. And not only amazing, but super important for women. Women love and often need time to feel the energy, to feel the polarity, the sexual play and the tension before they ever even want to be touched. Ladies, I can hear you all smiling and being like, thank you, Lacey. Please, every man, listen to this podcast. So dudes, if you're not doing this, well, then you need to have a little chat with me, babe. All right. Now, don't get me wrong. I love a quickie. And sometimes it's just not practical to make love for 2 to 3 hours. I totally get it. And there's nothing wrong with a 10-minute sex sesh. But if you're doing this all the time and having sex for the average amount of time that most couples are, which is only 7 minutes, then, no wonder you women don't want to have sex with you. All right. When you learn Tantra, you get to work with connection and breath you've never even imagined before because most people never get taught these things. So when I teach couples Tantra connection practices, they'll often tell me that those were their absolute favorite, even more so than teaching them how to give each other energy orgasms or penis and pussy massage. Because no one teaches you how to really connect and be intimate outside of the act of sex itself. I think that's really sad because a lot of women desire the connection and intimacy without the sex. And there's some men that do too, especially if the woman's a new mama or if she's breastfeeding. And when I teach a couple of these practices, it gives them the opportunity to connect and to be intimate while honoring their body's no. If they don't necessarily want sex now, but they do want to feel intimate and close to you, what a fucking gift. So the fifth reason that every long-term couple should learn Tantra is that, well, you learn how to give each other different types of orgasms and expanded orgasms. I mean, come on, do I really need to say more about this one? Women, if you've only ever had clitoral orgasms, or none at all, then you know that there are so many more experiences that you're not having, right? Now, I'm not trying to tell you this to give you FOMO, but I am telling you that if you've only had clit orgasms and you've been in a long-term relationship for a while, then babe, it's time to explore and to have some fun. All right, now the sixth reason that every long-term couple should learn Tantra is because you need to learn how to safely access your wild and primal nature and totally ravish each other without fear. There are many men out there that are terrified of their sex. They're terrified of their fuck, meaning that they're terrified of hurting you. This is a healthy fear, obviously, but at the same time, there's just not a place to really own a person's wild primal urge to fuck in our puritanical culture. Often women absolutely long to be ravished by their man. They want to be obliterated and they want to be fucked wild. But there are a lot of good, sensitive men out there that are terrified of unleashing their wild, primal impulse to fuck. Women have a desire to lose themselves and to fuck too, but it's often repressed so much more by guilt and trauma than most men. And it often just doesn't feel safe to express that at all because there's just absolutely no place for women to feel wild and really in touch with their primal urge to fuck. Because, just a few hundred years ago, they were killed for that. Witches, you heard of those? All right, in Tantra, you get a safe container to explore your wild primal selves and to really own this part of you without the fear that you're going to hurt your partner. And it takes a lot of dropping into your body with primal breath work. But when you get there, oh my God, it's so much fun and ecstatic. And it's like the best sexual experience ever. Now, the seventh reason that you should learn Tantra if you're in a long-term relationship is because you get so in tune with each other's subtle energy bodies and you become more sensitive to each other's needs that you almost begin to predict your partner's needs before they've even spoken them. We often get upset at our partners for not knowing what we want or for not being able to predict what we need. And I'm totally an advocate for telling our partners exactly and very clearly what we want, especially if they are male. But it's also really nice to be surprised by our partners every now and then with the exact thing that we need but didn't tell them. And in Tantra, you get so in tune with the subtleties of your partner. You get the opportunity to learn them deeper and deeper. So it's like you are able to predict what they need and you can surprise them with whatever it is. So how fun is that? All right, the eighth reason why all couples should learn Tantra is because you learn how to make sexuality a spiritual practice together and to become a sex god and goddess. Tantra is inherently a path to enlightenment. It's one of the only spiritual traditions that doesn't ignore a person's sexual nature on the road to enlightenment. And in Christianity and many other religions, for example, sexuality is either ignored or it's denounced. And it's also common, for the leaders of those religions to either have to become celibate or to take vows that invalidate their sexual nature at all. In my opinion, this is absolute insanity that God or goddess or whatever the fuck created us would give us a sexuality and a drive and that it couldn't be seen as sacred and good and a total celebration of life itself. But unfortunately, these religious leaders didn't agree with me. But in Tantra, you get to work with invocation and consecration, which is really what makes sex a sacred act. In tantric rituals, An invocation is where you invite a quality or an energy to emerge from within you. So you can invoke a god or goddess. You can invoke an element such as fire or water or earth, air, or space. Or you can invoke a quality like pleasure or orgasm or aliveness or wildness. And when you do an invocation, you're feeling it emerge from within you, but you can also feel it coming down inside of you. And the idea is that by the end of the ritual, you have completely embodied this quality that you have invoked. And a consecration is where you offer up the blessings and the benefits of this embodiment and this tantric ritual with your lover, or even with yourself, to a god or a goddess, to highest consciousness and deepest love, or to something like pleasure. It can be really anything. In no other tradition do you get specific rituals and practices to make sex a sacred act. Well, I mean, there are a couple others like Taoism, but more on that later. So if having a spiritual awakening together, or if having sex mean more for the both of you is something that's really important to you, then learning Tantra together is a really exquisite way to do this. And after 10, 20, 30 years together, it's unlikely that you won't have either found this wanting to happen naturally, either separately or together. In Tantra, you can learn to make sex sacred individually or with your partner. How amazing is that? And last but not least, the ninth reason why every couple should learn Tantra is because you'll never get bored with sex. That's right. There is so much that you learn in Tantra that it's really impossible to get to a point where you're bored and there's nothing more for you to learn here. Tantra is the portal to more. It can lead you to other sexuality practices and, BDSM and kink and all that sort of stuff too, which is also an amazing experience to partake in. But I think that it's important for a person to learn the fundamentals and the basics of Tantra before they explore those things, because it's so important for you to learn the yes, no, and the consent, and a couple of the other points that I've learned here before you go and start exploring all of those other fun things. So Tantra is really the portal to a lifetime of exquisite sexual experiences with your partner. And if that's something that you'd like to learn, either individually or with your partner, I want you to head to www.themultiorgasmicmama.com, and I want you to send me a message or book a call to talk with me. And thanks so much for listening in today, and happy Valentine's Day. I hope you get everything you want. And I'll talk with you all next week. Bye.